So another of the problems working this week is revisiting our birdwatcher exercise that we had done with lists here. Um, so in this birdwatcher exercise, again, if you haven't read the assignment, stop right now, pause this, go read that assignment. So I'm trusting now, if you're continuing this video, you have read that assignment. It might not make sense. You might end up rewatching it if you haven't read it. So it's absolutely 100%. You should go off and do that. So if you remember that assignment, we're adding bird sightings to a day. The difference now is instead of adding bird sightings blindly to whatever day happens to be there, we're specifying the day. And the advantage is we don't have to say when the day is over. We no longer have to give the bird sightings in order sequentially. We can just say, hey, this was the day it happened, and whatever days, I can go fill it in, add in other people's logs later on. And especially now that we're using maps, I can merge them later on using the updates. So that's kind of a cool thing as well. But I have the add bird sighting here, and I want to walk through this one with you a little bit. So the bigger picture is we're going to have the add bird sightings, and notice now there's no longer B. That's intentional. B was a start new day, and we don't need that anymore. But when we add the bird sighting, we're no longer adding it to a list, we're adding it to the day. Now, the bird sighting ledger is the one that's being passed in now. There's a little bit of a paradigm shift that I'm kind of in between the space right now, and there's good reasons behind that I won't go into now. But you're passing in from the tester a ledger down here, which is a dictionary, and you're going to fill this dictionary for us. And that's why I want to make sure you're using it properly here, and we're going to start this one together. So the bird sighting for the ledger is going to be equal to, the ledger for the day is going to be equal to the bird sighting. But it doesn't exactly work this way, right? So if I do this as simply as adding the bird sighting to the day and I run this, it's not going to be happy. So you can see, oops, I'm sorry, I didn't return the ledger. I have to do that as well. Sorry, let me run that again. Oh, I'm sorry, birds each day isn't working. But my ledger at this point is not exactly working because it's only tracking one bird sighting at a time. So let me actually do it this way. To be able to show what I'm talking about. I forgot my test case doesn't pick that up. So you can see my ledger is getting really, really big. There's a whole lot of things that are going on here. And I can actually control that at this point. But I can come way up high here. And we can see day one, I have a hawk. Day one I have a sparrow. Day one I have a hummingbird. Day one I have a phoenix. Day one I have a hawk. Well, notice it's not keeping track of these in ledger. It's just writing over it each and every time. And so then I end up with day one and day two. Well, after adding all these values in day one, I only have one item when I go into day two. So that kind of stinks. That's not what's supposed to happen. I'm supposed to keep track of all of these, right? So let me actually just show you real quick. If you don't want to deal with this many coming at a time, I have a random range. Here, the number of sightings is a random number between 10 and 50, and the number of days is between 10 and 20. So if you wanted to shrink this down, you could say I want there to be between 1 and 2 days and 1 and 5 sightings, and or whatever numbers you want to, and that'll shrink down the amount of data that gets printed out. So you can see I only have 1 day with 5 sightings this time, or I'm sorry, 2 days. So 4 sightings in the first day and just 1 sighting in the second day, it looks like, or maybe 2. But either way, the point is you can play with these numbers, but I made them really big so that way you can see a lot of data there to start with. So you don't have to look at this at all except for debugging, but if you need to do some debugging and print it out, you can always shrink that down. So let's come back here. And actually, maybe I will keep that smaller for the moment, but let me just show you practically speaking. I'm going to do between 3 and 6 days, and each day is going to have between 2 and 5 sightings, for instance. So that'll keep a reasonable amount of data, but enough to really have it be randomized inside of there. So what do I need to do? Well, I need to not track one bird sighting. I need to track a list of bird sightings. So what if I put this in a list? Okay, well, what happened here? Well, now I have a list of one bird sighting. It swaps it out every time, right? That's not the way a list works. I'm creating a new list and swapping it out every time. It's like, hey, let me write you down on your own piece of paper every time, and then I throw away that piece of paper every time. I need to write down the same piece of paper, right? So what I need to do is I need to get this and append to it. So what I can say is daily ledger is the ledger for that day. And then do a daily ledger dot append the bird sighting. And that's a function call, so I work on that one around. So that, okay, so I'm going to get the daily ledger, then I'm going to add in the bird sighting to that. Oh, but wait a minute. I got an error now. So it says key error day 1. So it never printed anything out. Oh, well, because the first time I run it, there's nothing in the ledger. Shoot. So now what do I do? Well, that's where the dictionary logic, we can use that a little bit. So we can say if, I'm sorry, day in ledger. So what's saying is this key in the ledger? If it is in the ledger, well, the daily ledger is going to be the day, and then we're going to append it to the day. Else, we can say daily, we can just say ledger of day is equal to a list which includes the bird sighting. So we end up actually doing both here. So if the day already exists, we already have a list, we get the list and we append to it. If it doesn't exist yet, if we haven't started that day yet, then we start that day by setting that value to be a new list with that bird sighting inside of it. All right, so this is a little bit different of a paradigm. If you've already done the dictionary, the encryption one, the simple cipher one, you only dealt with one item inside of it. You didn't deal with a list of items inside of here. So there's an example of how we make that list work. So let's save that, we run that. Okay, now we have some data. So we start with Phoenix, then we have Phoenix plus Finch plus Sparrow, and we keep adding those in, and then we are at, so we end up with a bunch of data inside here. There's a whole lot of stuff going on. So that's just starting you off. This is perfectly acceptable. I'm not going to put it out there for you. You're going to have to do it yourself. But this is the start to your assignment this week. It's going to be the start to what you need to be working on this week. So you'll start with this code. You can type in this one exactly as it is. You probably want to take out your print before you finish it up. But then you can use this concept to go forward. So the birds seen each day, well, this is like that book example. I'm going to by bird, essentially. I can go through and count by bird how many has been there. So every time I see a bird, I add 1 to it. But remember this structure here. It's going to be important to think about it. And so right now I have an array count, so this is nothing. You can just delete this. This doesn't mean anything. It's just a placeholder. But it is going to ask for an array to come back from this. So the answer for the last one is that. So you're going to use a dictionary, and then from that dictionary, you actually need to produce an array like this. So you might use this after all. But you're going to have an array of each bird count of all birds seen in the ledger. Okay, each day, all days basically. And then the print ledger, much the same. You're just going to do it now using the dictionary instead of the list. And the number of sightings for, what we're saying here is you need to return a number here for the bird. So if I hand you a bird, you tell me how many sightings for. It's actually the same data structure it's going to use up here. You just are returning one of them. And then all birds spotted at, this is again like we just created. It's a list of birds. So we're saying for each location, so at the park, what are all different types of birds spotted at the park? At the forest, what's all different birds spotted in the forest? In the jungle, what's all the birds spotted in the jungle, for instance? And it's going to ask you for one of those as part of the test case. So if you have questions on this again, feel free to reach out and ask. But there's a little example of getting started. So use this example and build it from there. The toughest part of this, as I said, is probably the design. It's probably figuring out how to properly use the dictionary. So take a guess. Look at it if that structure is answering your question. Look at what it's expecting to return inside of here. Read these comments and see what the comment says. That's a little bit of a hint as well. And if you're not sure, reach out and ask, because that's the best thing to do is seek help when you're not sure about what an interface is supposed to do or what data to return. So best of luck. Looking forward to see what you make of these.